News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to The Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. This morning in the studio, you have Garrett Ray and Brice Payne, and we are talking about your financial wellness checkup, things you need to check off that list every time you sit down with your advisor. Good morning, Brice. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Garrett. Thank you. Good to see you here in the studio. Boy, we've had a busy couple of weeks here.
We have. We were off to, our annual conference. Tends to rotate cities. This year it was in Chicago. We had a good little visit up there. It's a good opportunity for us to learn the latest and greatest in the industry, get to learn from other advisors who do work that we do, similar work all around the country. We always, iron sharpens iron. So you want to be with the best, learning from the best, and I always look forward to that conference every year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a good city, good weather while we were up there. Hey, we've got a good show here. Your financial wellness checkup is what we're going to talk about. I always like to use analogies, and one of my favorite analogies in the world of financial planning is keeping yourself fit physically, like having a physical trainer. I liken us to financial physical trainers. So that's what our topic is going to be here in the first and second segment. But Garrett, why don't you lead us off on the Wealth Guardian Service Salute here?
Absolutely, Brice. Each and every week of this program, we want to take a moment out of the program just to recognize our men and women in uniform, our community first responders. It is because of you that we are able to live the fruitful and healthy lives and protected lives that we enjoy. Thank you very much for protecting our freedoms and making us sleep a little easier each and every night.
And that extends out to the families who support those individuals as well. We know it's a sacrifice on your end as well. All right, Garrett, we always ask ourselves a question at the beginning here, better get to know your Wealth Guardian's financial advisor. And since we were in Chicago, we took a little trip here. I thought I'd ask you, and you can ask me, what's the favorite city you've ever visited?
Oh, man. Favorite city I've ever visited. That's a tough one just because there's so many cool things about different cities, whether it's history or just the town itself is, alive and full of things. I think for me, I recently got to go to Boston with my wife for her graduation up there, and that was really cool. I'd never been to Boston before. Tons of history there. Really just good for me to kind of get and see, just a different part of the country and a very historical city with a lot of background. So I'll say that for now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say D.C.
Okay, sure.
Despite what tends to live up there in D.C., politicians being my least favorite breed of people.
Yeah.
I do love the history. I love American history, what makes this country great. And that is just one, you can't swing a cat without hitting a museum up there. And I just love walking into every public building that is up there and learning about. Of course, my father is buried at Arlington too, so I always stop by his site when I'm up there. But yeah, I'd say D.C. New York might have come in a close second.
Sure. Big up.
But I would not want to live there. But it is fun to visit because there's a lot to do there. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started on this, your financial wellness checkup. We're going to liken in today's segments, both the first and second, financial planning to having a wellness checkup with your doctor. So the first one that we want to talk about is reviewing your goals, and whether your goal in the health world is to feel better, to be more flexible, to not hurt as much, or to have, just more energy throughout the day. There's certain things you need to do, but we've got to first review what is your goal.
Yeah, sure.
And, Garrett, when we sit down with somebody who comes in and wants to go through the planning process with her, of which, by the way, there is no cost or obligation to do that with the Wealth Guardians, the first question I ask, and I don't know, you probably lead your appointment similarly, but the first question I ask is what brings you to a financial planner at this point? But the second one I ask is describe what retirement looks like.
Yeah.
It's an open-ended question. I just want you to paint the picture of what you're envisioning when you retire. Are you sitting on your front porch in a rocking chair? Are you going around the world? Are you taking the grandkids to Disneyland? Are you going out hunting or fishing on a boat every day that you don't currently have? That's what I want you to paint the picture for me. So discussing the importance of defining the retirement goals. You can't have a successful retirement if you don't know what retirement looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like your relationship with your doctor, life is things are going to change. Your health is going to change. That's true too in your retirement. And lots of times when we're sitting down with someone or a couple, they haven't retired yet. So it's tell me about what you envision retirement looking like. Let's get some goals, maybe even some dreams out there on paper that in the next year to two, if we've recently retired, starting here, currently, what are the goals? What are the dreams? What are we trying to accomplish? I find that conversation is mostly a discussion mostly about early retirement. There's this kind of concept in our field of, retirement is broken up into three different phases. There's the go years of retirement, the slow go years where we're still active, we're still doing things. And then there's the no-go years where you're kind of, focusing on legacy goals, that sort of thing. What's going to happen when I'm no longer here on this earth? And so you have to be willing to go through all three phases of that goal planning stage with someone that you're talking to in the office. And so we do a really good job of that, of understanding here's the three basic stages of retirement, because ideally we're planning for hopefully a 15, 20, maybe even 25-year retirement for most folks. So what does that look like? Let's break it down and get, pen to paper on things that is important to people's minds and their hearts.
Yep. Yeah, I agree completely. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning, it is Garrett Ray and Brice Payne. So thank you for joining us. And we're talking in both the first and segment today, your financial wellness checkup. We're likening financial planning to physical fitness planning. And so we talked there about reviewing your goals. That should be one of the first things that you need to do, is defining what retirement goals look like. And the next one is checking your vitals, and that is budgeting and spending.
Yeah.
Garrett, there's three main components that we look at when we're planning somebody's retirement: sources of income, the assets that they have, and their spending, their expenditures.
Mm-hmm.
We all like to know how much we have.
Yep.
Right. Most of us have a pretty good idea of what we've got in our 401ks and our IRAs and our checking accounts. There's not a lot of hand-holding we have to do in sitting somebody down and figuring out what they have.
Yep. That's on a piece of paper.
It's on the piece of paper. We all keep a pretty good idea on that. And then there's income. Well, again, we tend to like to know what we're making. We have a pretty good idea of what our annual salary is or what our monthly paycheck is, other forms of income. If we've got rental income, we can pretty much, my experience is that anybody who comes to us can pretty much lay that out pretty easily. But here's where we might have to have some hand-holding.
Oh, yeah.
Is the third component: expenditures, spending. What are you spending money on? And I say that we need to hold somebody's hand on that, because I think psychologically that's where we put blinders on. We like to know what we make. We like to know what we have, but it kind of pains us in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
When we put pen to paper and realize what we're spending.
Oh, yeah. It's, and it just, since we're likening this to a physical wellness check, this financial check that we're talking about, the doctor, whether you come in with acute symptoms, right, and what's wrong, or you have a very strong belief of what's wrong, the doctor's always going to take one step back and check vitals first.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in our industry, we're going to take one step back. Okay, guys, understand this is what you want to accomplish. This is what you have on paper. What are we spending? And oftentimes for folks, that's the more painful part of the discussion, because they don't think about it as much. Oh, I put it on the credit card, but I pay it off every month. Okay, cool. How much is that? And is that getting to a sustainable point, or is it getting unsustainable? Do we have lifestyle creep involved? We see it sometimes. And so taking that one step back is a nice reality check, not only for, the couple that we're talking to, but also just for us as financial planners. Okay, well, how do we have to plan for this couple? Is this something that is going on the right course, or do we need to make some slight course corrections and maybe have a somewhat uncomfortable conversation? But we'd rather catch it early, just like your doctor would. If you got high blood pressure, let's find out and start getting it course corrected before it becomes a problem 4 or 5, 10 years down the line.
Exactly. It's not uncommon to have somebody, you ask them, okay, now that we've talked about income, now that we've talked about assets, let's talk about expenses. How much is your monthly budget, or how much are you spending on a monthly or annual basis? On a monthly basis, it's not uncommon for somebody to say, let's say somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000.
Yeah.
If we're going to compare this to having a wellness check, that is literally, folks, like going to the doctor and saying, I've got this sharp pain somewhere between my big toe and my left wrist. that does the doctor no good. And you can literally plan for somebody spending $8,000 a month and they're going to have $1 million at age 90. If we say that they're spending $1,000 more a month, they run out of money by age 85.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference between that. So we really got to pinpoint that. Also, not to go on this too much longer, but you want to separate debt. You want mortgage and car loans, student loans, those kind of things. Why? For two reasons. One, the debt doesn't go on forever. Presumably, that's going to drop off at some point, right? And then the other reason is there's no inflation applied to debt.
Yeah.
Just because inflation, we're planning that to be 3.5% or whatever, that doesn't apply to a mortgage.
Sure.
So you want to separate that for those two reasons. All right. Very good. Well, we do have to get to a break here, and I do want to invite any of you, if what we're talking about here sounds like, hey, you know what, I need to talk to these guys. I need to sit down with Garrett or Brice or Doug and make sure that I am all lined up for retirement the right way. I haven't thought about what my retirement looks like. I haven't thought about how much I spend. What else aren't I thinking about that I should be? Well, then I invite you to call us up in 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409 to schedule your planning process with us. It's generally a 4-meeting process, but there's no cost or obligation to do that. Just your time and your gas to get to our offices. And I can assure you, when all's said and done, it is in all likelihood going to be the most thorough planning process you've ever been through. That's at least the feedback that we get consistently from the people who go through it with us. All right. Well, we got to get to a break here. And what do we do before the break? Every weekend, we ask whoever's sitting across from me a trivia question, unless Garrett's asking the trivia question to me. Garrett, are you ready?
I hope so.
All right. Here we go. Garrett, Steve Fawcett, a world-renowned aviator who in September 2007 died in a private plane crash in Nevada. And of course, that shocked the aviation world. But he is best known for his world record accomplishment 5 years earlier on June 19th, 2002. What was this accomplishment?
Okay.
Garrett, I think Garrett knows. Stick around for the answer to that trivia question and see if we stumped Garrett on the other side of this break. This is Brice Payne. With me is Garrett Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio, along with Garrett Ray. And in this segment, we're going to continue our conversation around your financial wellness checkup, likening financial planning to physical fitness planning. Now, we asked Garrett a trivia question, and I could tell by the glitter in his eyes that he probably knows this one, but we're going to see if you know it out there as well. But before we do that, I've got a question for you. I want to ask you this. Are you planning to retire, period? Sometimes we say, are you planning to retire in the next 10 years? But I don't want to limit it to that. Are you planning to retire, period? Probably are. Well, have you met with a retirement income certified professional who is also a fiduciary to help you through that planning process? If you have not, I'm going to invite you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. So as certified retirement planning specialists, we're going to put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, and tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So if you put aside at least $400,000 and you want to take us up on this no-cost, no-obligation review, I want you to call us at 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409, or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Now, let us show you in black and white how we can help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right, now having said all that, let's get back to this trivia question. Garrett, Steve Fawcett, does that name ring a bell with you?
Sort of.
All right. He's a world-renowned aviator who in September 2007 passed away in a private plane crash in Nevada, which shocked the aviation world. I remember that. But he is best known for his world record accomplishment 5 years earlier on June 19th, 2002. What was this accomplishment? I'll give you a clue, Garrett. It did have something to do with aviation.
Thanks, Brice. So I will say I have absolutely no idea. I'm going to assume it has some sort to do with some sort of endurance challenge, like he flew like the longest sustained continuous flight, but I could be completely right. Okay.
Wow. How about that? He has no idea what he's talking about, but yet he's exactly right. Steve Fawcett, in June 19th, 2002,
Okay.
did the first solo nonstop flight around the world.
Okay.
He took off from Australia and landed in Queensland, Australia. He landed on July 3rd. This was 20,626 miles, average speed of 200 miles per hour. Took him 13 days, 8 hours, and 33 minutes. What was interesting about his vehicle?
I have no idea. I mean, truly, this was one that you definitely stumped me, and I just stumbled into a correct answer, sort of correct answer.
Well, the Spirit of Freedom was a balloon.
Okay. Yeah.
It was the first solo nonstop flight around the world, was in a balloon, and he had tried it 4 times before. This was his 5th attempt, and it was successful. He was also one of the 2 pilots, if you remember that plane that made the first flight around the world, but it wasn't solo. That was a co-pilot that he had as well. But it had like really, really long wings, and it had 2 cabins or whatever. It was a strange design flight. Okay. But the wings were so long that they actually had to have wheels at the very end of the wings because the weight of the fuel was going to have them drag. So he actually went around the world twice. Once, first nonstop flight around the world, and then the first solo nonstop flight around the world. So that is Steve Fawcett's accomplishment there. All right, now let's go ahead and get back to our main topic here after Garrett just got lucky with that one. Your financial wellness checkup. We're likening today in the second segment, just like we did in the first, we're likening financial planning to physical fitness planning, or making sure that you are financially healthy, making sure that you are physically healthy. And in the first one, we talked about reviewing your goals. That's the importance of defining what retirement looks like, and then checking your vitals. That's really talking about budgeting and making sure that you understand what you're spending. Let's move on now to screening your portfolio. This would be your investment strategy, Garrett.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think when people think about, financial advisors, financial planners, this is what they think a majority of our time is spent on. And that is, to some degree true. There is a lot of planning that goes into one's portfolio. What we're going to do, though, is take a look at it from, yes, of course, we want to have a diverse and robust portfolio, but we really want to make sure that that's aligned with your risk tolerance. It's generally a rule of thumb, but as people tend to age, they get, more and more risk adverse. And so they've worked a long, hard career. They've done a good job saving, and now they want to start getting defensive and protective of that money they've worked so hard for. So let's make sure that what the investments inside the portfolio are properly aligned. It can't tell you how many times we meet people in their late 50s, early 60s, middle 60s that are still invested in heavily aggressive portfolios. At that point, they've probably reached, close to their peak savings in their life. And if the market did something we didn't like and it went down 30, 40, even 50%, like we saw back in 2008, 2009, they'd be pretty devastated, or at least certainly disheartened. We want to try and prevent that catastrophic loss scenario as best we can. Again, tailoring it, of course, for the individual, the couple that we're talking to. Some people are more risky and they're comfortable with that risk for other reasons, but that's a large part of the conversation we have. And then, of course, making sure that the actual portfolio is as tax efficient as possible, and also looking at diversification amongst the portfolio so that we're not, subject to one bucket or one basket of risk category inside the portfolio, so that it's, professionally managed and well-rounded.
Yeah. When you talk about diversification, there's 12 different types of risk out there. Sometimes you can say there's 13 different types of risk out there. We're all familiar with market risk. That we get that one. And if you have all of your money in one particular company, say 90% of your portfolio is in Tesla, you're not taking so much market risk. You're taking company risk or stock risk with that one. There's really about 12 different types of risk. And what we're talking about here is you're exposing yourself unnecessarily to something called sequence of returns risk. And that is one that a lot of people are not familiar with. And we've done actually a vault episode. And if you don't know what I mean by vault episode, we have our YouTube channel. These shows that you're listening to right now this weekend morning is also recorded video-wise and uploaded to our Wealth Guardians channel on YouTube. But we also do once a week, a Vault episode, which is a shorter episode on one specific topic. We have done a Vault episode on sequence of return risk. And if you're getting ready to retire and you think, I'm not taking that much market risk, I want you to look up or watch our video on sequence of return risk. That is something that is really new to a lot of people. They hadn't heard of that one. They hadn't thought of that one. And that is really why you want to make sure that your risk is properly aligned, particularly in the early years of retirement.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't know this, but you can actually start upping your risk again the further you go into retirement. The most important time to not be at risk or be as conservative as you can be is in the initial years of retirement. And in a simple sentence, the reason is because your money has to last you the longest period of time when you first retire. Yeah. Right. If you've been retired for 20 years, you're 80 years old now, well, your retirement money is probably only have to last you another 10 years or so.
Correct.
But if you're retiring at 60 years old, you probably have 30 years of retirement ahead of you or something like that. So that's where you have to be really careful. You can start taking more risk later on. So that is screening your portfolio and investment strategy. And like you said, Garrett, that is just one of the things that we cover is portfolio allocation. For somebody to think that a financial planner, that's the main thing that they do is kind of like going to the doctor and thinking, well, the main thing that he does is check my heart rate.
Yep.
Well, that's one important thing that he does, but he does a lot more than that. Or at least if he doesn't, then I'm suggesting you go to a different doctor. All right. Well, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show here in the second segment, and Garrett and I are continuing our conversation around your financial wellness checkup and symbolizing here financial health with your physical health. And the next one we want to talk about here is preventative measures. This is proactive planning.
Yep.
And that's really discussing the importance of proactively planning for healthcare costs.
Yep.
We can talk about other ones as well, taxes, but healthcare costs, long-term care needs. Garrett, this is an important topic for people.
Yeah, and it's a part of financial planning that I think goes skipped over far too often. So, particularly if we're talking to someone who has aspirations to retire a little bit earlier, let's say before the age of 65, and they're currently on their employer's healthcare plan. Okay, fair enough. Well, if that drops off, if you retire at, say, age 62, you're not eligible for Medicare until 65. So what's the plan for the next 3 years to provide for healthcare insurance for either the individual or the couple? Do you have to go out in the private market? Are we talking about the public markets? What's the cost of all of that? Have you even done the analysis? So that's a question that we will certainly go through with clients if that's their particular goal. Even if we get later into retirement, what's coming up more and more, and I don't have the stats right in front of me, but it's around 70% of people out there will at some point in their life require skilled nursing to come into their home. They may have to go into an assistance home themselves for a condition they may have, but they don't have a plan for long-term care. They don't have a plan other than their retirement nest egg to plan for that very expensive skilled care. And so one of two things happens. Either they burn through their entire retirement savings paying for themselves, or that burden gets passed on at least to some degree to loved ones, family members, children, that sort of thing. And so your medical issue becomes now the kid's issue or a brother or sister's issue, and they're helping you out. And so we have conversations about, okay, as we age, what safeguards do we have in place protecting our own health? And if we need that skilled care coming up. And so, long-term care could be a solution to help someone over that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're doing our planning, we're checking out what does your nest egg look like year by year. We have to make some assumptions on what is the average rate of inflation going to be, what's the average rate of return on your portfolio going to be, what's the cost of living adjustment, the COLA on your Social Security going to be. If we're off on those numbers in the wrong direction on all three of those by a little bit, that's not going to blow up somebody's retirement plan.
No.
But if they suddenly have to go in at age 85 for 7 years into a skilled nursing facility, which costs $7,000 to $8,000 a month, that is what could blow up a retirement plan. So you really want to make sure that you've had that conversation with your financial planner. If your financial planner, all they ever do, or your advisor, all they ever do is talk to you about your portfolio, then I'm going to encourage you to sit down with a holistic financial planner that does incorporate tax mitigation strategies, healthcare, long-term care expenses, so that you've got a well-rounded financial plan, not one that's just focused on portfolio allocation. at any rate, what I want you to focus on out there is having a great rest of your weekend. That we're out of time here today, so I want to thank you for joining us, and hope to think that we'd see you back here next weekend as well. Garrett, thank you for joining me. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne along with Garrett Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And I'm here to remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.